Hello, everybody.
Good morning, everyone. It's Saturday, 11 a.m., and it's time to wake up
and smell the rosin.
So glad you tuned in. Today we have a very, very special event. We've been calling our series from for a while already master classes, and that was by faith because technically a master class in music world means that we actually have someone that we're teaching with the audience present, which is, a really awesome thing to be able to do. And so today we're finally having what masterclass actually really means in the music world. So we have a wonderful local cellist, Zubin Solis, who will be joining us in just a few moments.
Yes. So you can go ahead and turn your camera on and everything. We have him waiting in the wings, but while he does that, we'll just
while he does that, I would like to share with you. So tell us about the piece we're gonna work with Solis on.
So I'll let him talk about the piece a little more in depth. But this is the Andante by Bach, the Andante molto espressivo, originally written for piano, but it's arranged by Fitzenhagen. And Fitzenhagen is a very popular cello arranger, and he has a lot of stuff for solo cello, cello quartet, cello ensemble, all that good stuff. So it'll be really exciting to work through this and to kind of play something so beautiful that was written for piano for the cello.
That's great. And I would like to also talk about something that, how we usually have a little discussion on important topics. And, this is the week when the region, all state, all the students who participated in region audition and all state auditions in Texas, they found out the results very recently. And I think it's very important to discuss just the topic of competitions in music. And I would love for you guys to pitch in. We're going to have, hi Zubin, so we're going to discuss that later. And for now, we're going to start our masterclass on Bach.
Great. Let me just wait for the YouTube to catch up so I make sure that I can see his face.
Oh, yeah.
Our Zoom is a little behind the YouTube stream, so I'm looking at it on my phone, so I want to be sure. Yep, there he is. Okay.
Hi, Zubin. How are you doing? Can you hear us?
Yes, I could hear you.
And we can hear you very well, too.
Amazing. This is so awesome.
Exciting.
Awesome. Well, we have a lot of people watching. You have a lot of fans, Zubin.
Yes, you do.
Awesome.
You're loud, man.
Hello, everybody.
Awesome.
So I introduced a little bit about the piece you're playing, just a very generalized idea. But would you like to say anything about this piece?
Sure. My first experience with this piece was a recording by a pianist called Glenn Gould.
Oh, wonderful.
And his recording, there's a lot of talk about whether or not piano, what kind of instrument piano is, but when in Gould's hands, I really think it's a stringed instrument, and I think his approach to the instrument is very much like a string player's approach. He breaks chords when he doesn't really have to, and I just thought his performance of this piece was so it was really incredible, and I thought, well, I kind of want to do that. So I Googled it, and sure enough, there's an arrangement for cello, or a transcription for cello. Sorry.
That's wonderful.
So yeah.
That's how I think about music always. I want to steal other instruments' rep, like we
Yeah.
have rep, That's why I started playing viola.
That's why she started playing viola, because she was like, oh, Esther's playing all this cool cello rap, I want to play it too, which we all know that it's not going to sound the same on viola.
But I get to scratch that itch, that's the thing. So I totally, and I've Googled the piece a little bit. Of course, I've heard the Italian Concerto is very popular, but it is actually an arioso style. Mm-hmm. And what can do arioso style better than a string bowed instrument? Let's be honest, right?
Yes. Yeah, you're right there.
Well, great. So I'll stop talking and I'll let you go ahead and play whenever you're ready. Just go for it, and you can play through the whole thing, and then we'll talk.
I'll play through the first half
where
we have major rests. Yes. Sorry.
Okay, great. Yeah. So whatever you're comfortable with going through, that's perfect.
have such a good bow control.
Yeah, I'm sure
Thank
everybody at home is clapping as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Well, awesome. So this is great, and I think one of the things that I love about your playing is that you have a lot of natural musicality, a lot of soul, a beautiful sound, which those things can't really be taught, and if you try to teach them are extremely difficult, to have that innate sense of the instrument. So congratulations on having that. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
And I know Dr. Seitz agrees. One of the things I think that could happen more is more dynamic contrast. And I know that over Zoom it's a little bit hairy because we're not right in front of each other. The speakers and the internet, there's a lot of stuff standing between you and I. But even so, it could be a really good exercise in how to exaggerate. Because, if you playing over Zoom is kind of like playing on stage, because when we're on stage, we have to exaggerate to get to all the way to the very back row of the audience. And kind of same on Zoom, we have to exaggerate a little more than we would in a small practice room or a small room. And I think as a performer myself, there are many times where I've felt like, oh, I'm doing a lot of dynamics, I'm doing a lot with the phrasing, I'm doing a lot with the shaping of this piece. And then I play it for someone and they're like, oh yeah, I didn't really get it. And to me, I can tell that you're aiming to do these things, but it's not quite coming through as much as I would like. And I think it would add this whole other layer of depth to your piece and to your playing, to the performance of this piece. So at the very beginning, it starts as piano. And I think not only should we be piano with our right hand, and again, it's a soloistic piano, so of course I don't want you to come in and like be mousy. We don't want that. We want to hear your beautiful sound. But what you can do is use a lighter bow arm, less weight in the string, and a faster bow speed, and that actually kind of spins the sound outward. And that was something that one of my teachers, Julia Lichten, talked about a lot. Lynn Harrell, may he rest in peace, he talked a lot about that as well, like spinning the sound with a lighter weight, because when you bear down too hard, it actually stifles the sound a little bit, especially in the piano dynamics. So in this beginning, when you have that piano, lifting your arm just a little bit, moving maybe a little bit closer to, not super close to the bridge, just, a nice middle ground, and nice fast bow speed. Do you want to just try playing the beginning? I know it's technically, I don't know if you were playing that as a harmonic or not. No, I don't think you were, but just play an A solid and just practice. Try that spinning the sound and see what happens. Yeah.
I want to pitch in with something. Esther, you're so correct about, when for a performer, in order to communicate contrast, we have to exaggerate. Now, but what my rude awakening about how different recording is from the live performance is, as live performers, we're all about projecting. So usually, when we talk about exaggerating, we're exaggerating on both ends, forte and piano. But what I found out about recording, actually, that's what makes it hard. You can't exaggerate forte too much, because the mic is basically like someone is hearing right there. So most of the dynamic range that you get is usually from exaggerating piano. And that's why sometimes it's so weird. So, but on the other, once you get it, it actually becomes easier, because you see, you don't want to be too heavy and too aggressive on forte, because you see, now that the mic is like, I'm hearing by instrument, all those little extra noises that we make on stage that don't go to the audience, guess what? The mic hears it and catches it. So but also it catches your sound very loudly. So for the forte, you can be more like intense emotionally, but I think it's safer to say about mezzo forte range this way. It's more about being very clean on the forte and being very, like maybe varying your vibrato, your bow placement to communicate a little different focus of your sound. but you don't want to really exaggerate your forte. You have to keep a good lid on it. So then the only thing you're left with to communicate that contrast is more about exactly how can you drop your piano but without losing that intensity of emotion. So I'm glad you started talking, because that's actually the catch there. So the more you can make your piano engaging and more drop it, then the more you will increase the contrast.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting times we're living in, you know, where we're not only master classes and lessons, like we're not only talking about what it means to play for a live audience anymore, but now we have to talk so much more about what it means to play for a microphone. And so I'm really glad that Dr. Seitz brought that up. And I think that's totally, you know, correct. So when you're playing for a recording, or if you're playing this, you know, right in front of a microphone, there are things that you're going to do differently than if you were playing in a large hall. Just like, you know, if I was playing a concerto in a hall versus playing it in a small room for, like, you know, a judge, I'm going to project differently. I'm going to use, you know, I'm going to probably use less weight than I would projecting in a giant hall. But regardless of the dynamic and what you're doing, spinning the sound is really, really important. And that piano, I loved that. It was so clean and crisp. It was like a bell. It was super, even through the Zoom speakers, I could tell the difference, because you weren't bearing down so hard to where it sounded suffocated. Not that you sounded like you were suffocated, but it's just that particular sound that you're looking for, to have that nice, it still has meat to it. Yes. It's not wimpy, but it's like a beautiful, like, airy sound.
It carries really well.
It carries, absolutely.
You know, that's very Russian school. You know, the way when my teachers taught me at the beginning, there was a lot of emphasis on using a lot of bow, because it kind of like spinning the sound. I totally get it, because you realize, like, imagine you're trying to move a really heavy table in your room that was there forever. Like, at first, to get the table moving, you would have to exert a lot of strength, right? But once it starts moving, the friction becomes much less. So you're just keeping up with, that's, I think, that's what sometimes we feel like we have to constantly exert the same amount of force from the beginning of the sound to continue. And I think spinning sound, that I love that term, it refers to, yes, you have to exert a little bit more, right? Force to start the string spinning. But once it starts vibrating, if you can catch that balance where you just how do you say it in English? Perpetuating that vibration, then you realize you don't really have to work so hard. And that's what you just did. It was just really well. And that's a great way to get your piano crystal, like you said, very flowy. And it actually makes you, I can't explain it, but it makes your sound fly farther, but still be very soft. Kind of like actors, you know, if you watch a real play, like in the theater, the actors can be whispering on stage, but you can hear them in the back row. So that was like really what you just did. That was kind of that effect for me. Like it was, I could clearly say it was very beautiful, very gentle piano, but it was really filled with resonance and, you know, projecting. I like that.
Awesome. So do you want to try just that first phrase? You can go maybe up to that poco crescendo and just, you know, try playing that beginning through again with this in your mind, with spinning the sound in your mind. Awesome.
You made me cry. I wanted to cry.
Really good.
It was so good. And you know, the best part is then you're saving that really beautiful full sound for later. It gave me chills. I tell you this. One thing that you also did that I loved, you had more decay in your sound. And so I love how you brought out to phrase. You brought some notes out but then you were aware of keeping so you had that little decay, and that was perfect for style. It really made it even more Bach style, even though it still kept it very, I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree, and I think it's funny, we were talking about this last night in preparation for today, and we were thinking, like, when you play something like Bach, there are definitely stylistic things that you do that are different than, if you were playing Elgar or something else, of course, because there's, Bach, there's a lot more, there's decay, there's a cleaner sound, maybe less vibrato, but considering this was written for a piano, sometimes we do want to imitate that pianistic sound, which, like Dr. Seitz said, with the decays and also that clean, crisp piano sound, I feel like that imitates kind of what, like, if you were to listen to a grand piano in a hall, like that really nice, clean, still soft but clean, carrying sound. But we were also saying, because this is arranged for cello, a lot of people, like whoever wrote this was Fitzenhagen, he was looking for something that the piano couldn't give, right?
Yeah.
So we don't,
because strings rule, bows rule, right? Bows rule.
so we don't want to completely smother that either.
Yeah.
Yes.
We do want to we want to bring out those pianistic elements and those elements of Bach, but I think because he, the cello is it can be a very romantic instrument, and I think he was looking for the arranger, yes. The arranger was looking for to bring a more romantic sound to this. So I like what you're doing, because I think you have a pretty good balance. Now when I just heard this, the balance was much better between romantic and this crisp Bach sound that we want to hear. I think the balance was really good, and I think going onward, so now we're at this poco crescendo, and this is where I think you can start to kind of bring that romantic sound a little bit, but it's still hidden a little bit. It's still under wraps. It's kind of like you got the courage to come out a little bit, but then there's another diminuendo and you're coming back to that really nice spinning sound. Would you like to try that? So
Sure.
Starting from that poco crescendo and just trying to make that crescendo through the phrase, but being aware of keeping your bow moving, keeping your weight evenly distributed through the bow so you can keep the sound spinning and not get stuck.
Yes.
Very nice. And I love how your vibrato changed a little bit too, with that being, and usually, it's not a good thing when your vibrato changes too much with your bow, but in your case it was perfect, because you just, being such a musical person, your left hand right away realized, and adjusted, and then, so your vibrato became a little bit more like this rather than like this, on your bow. So it was just a perfect balance between your bow speed and the lightness, a little bit of more airiness in your bow, but then the vibrato kind of got a little bit more contained, and I feel like it's just really good. Can we try it from the beginning and that whole part?
Yeah,
see how it would, if it's okay with you. I'd love to hear from the beginning and going on with this crescendo, how it would sound all together.
Yes. Awesome. That was great. I really got the whole arc of that phrase, that section. That was really nice. How does that feel for you?
It feels much better, because you made the good point earlier that I'm giving myself more space. I'm giving myself more room to breathe, and one of the things that I've discovered over the years is that if I'm not free, if I'm not loose, if I'm not relaxed, neither is the instrument. And and I think that playing just now, I really felt that the instrument was less encumbered by me, and maybe the sound was a little bit better for it.
Yeah, that was wonderful. Yeah, and it's all about, you know, especially with pieces like these where you want that beautiful lyrical sound. Sometimes I think we feel like we have to fight for that sound, we have to work so hard, but sometimes what you really have to do is let go. Kind of like, you know, you give it that push, you give it that initial start, and then you kind of just let the momentum, you know, of your body take over. And part of being a cellist, it's wonderful, is we get to just like hug our instrument right here, and we can really, yes, exactly, give your cello a hug. But if you're you know, when you can just lean into yourself and into the ground and break into that trusting feeling, it really does give you more space. And that's one of the things, you know, that I sense too. I've sensed that this second time around, when you started thinking about those things, you weren't so worried about not taking up space. You were like, you allowed yourself to take up all the space you needed and more. But you let your space extend past you and the instrument, and now it's going. And that's what, you know, is the difference between playing for ourselves right here and playing for others out there. And having that, you know, and it's funny because it really is a mindset, but, you know, and this is something Dr. Seitz does, I know, like she'll put like a dot on the wall or some sort of face or something on the wall.
That face is still on my office wall.
And have people play to that face. And it's funny because you think that it would really make a difference, but it does. Like those psychological things, like singers do that a lot too, just like having those psychological things, because it really is a mindset that you have and like that projection and that sound. So I love that you brought that up. Also, just to let you know, you have a lot of fans commenting. They love your playing.
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank you, everybody.
Jay Menendez is
Hi,
very talented and musical cello player. I'm glad to hear him playing again. Thank you for your encouraging and recommendations.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm so glad.
Was that Juan Menendez by chance?
Yes, that's Mr.
Oh my
Menendez.
goodness, he was my orchestra director.
Yes, we know that.
Hi, Mr. Menendez.
And then we have lots of people saying bravo, beautiful, very good. So
Thank you, everybody.
You've been, you know,
thank you so much.
You're pleasing the fans. They're really
that's
happy.
good. God peeps. That's good.
Awesome. Well, here's another thing I wanted to talk about. So we're doing good on time. So I wanted to talk a little bit about shifting. Excuse me. And as cellists, we talk about shifting so much, right? It's one of our very big, I think, you know, double bass this as well, but we shift in a little bit of a different way than they do. I think it's very unique in how much we have to shift. So there are different kinds of shifts. There are, you know, shifts where you're going to a note with the same finger. There's shifts where you're kind of traveling on a finger. There are lots of different things you can play with. There's heavier shifts. There's lighter shifts. Faster shifts. I think right now, all of your shifts sound the same to me, and they're beautiful. You have a really nice shifting technique, but now that you have that nice shifting down, I think you can step it up and create more variety by varying the kinds of shifts that you're playing with. So like, for example, most of the shifting that I'm realizing is sliding from note to note, but maybe try, you know, doing some of those shifts where you're shifting from a finger or traveling, or even just having a lighter shift. Sometimes I feel like most of the shifts that you're doing are a little bit heavy, which I think heavy shifts are good for certain parts, but if we do too many heavy shifts in a row, it can start to sound a little bit seasick, maybe, like that it's a little bit too warbly, which, you know, and that's not saying anything bad about your playing, it's just one of those things that I'm being picky because you sound very good. But maybe we can pick a spot where there's a lot of, maybe where you go into the D string, maybe, I guess we could stick with this, I don't know, I'll let you pick a spot that has a lot of shifting, maybe we can work with that.
So basically it's kind of, I see it, I love, you have very vocal, you know, innately we feel that, you know, if you listen to a vocalist sing, sometimes they will, if they have a, for example, if they're changing pitch on the vowel, it would have that natural glissando happening, right? But sometimes they change pitch on a consonant. In that case, it's not. And so I feel like it's so awesome that we can imitate both. But I always try to think of the one that has that beautiful vocalized glissando, especially in this style. It's more like jalapeno pepper. You know, if you put too much, and then you can't eat your tacos, you know? So in a way, I agree, you're doing such a beautiful job on those, but I'm almost feeling if you could treat them more like jewels, you know, and use them just kind of we did with piano, right? You saved your biggest sound for that special event. So you could kind of get your listeners addicted to those beautiful little morsels, sometimes with a little bit of jalapeno in it, right? But the rest, you kind of save it to kind of wow them instead of like just, you know, using it right away. So I think that's what you meant, right? So and definitely at your level of technique, oh my goodness, you can do anything you want with your sound. And like I think it might be a good strategy to save the best for the most like emotional moments, so to speak, right?
Yeah. So I was actually looking at this. It's the beginning of the third line. So like for example, going to that C, and even before that, going down to the D. So you coming up to that, you have. So that shift from the F to the D, that's going to be kind of a quick light shift. We don't really want to bring it out too much because otherwise it would interrupt the phrase. So having that. Right there, that's going to be very light, quick, fast. So you would release your finger and move on the string, on top of the string, and reapply the pressure when you get there. So, do you want to just try that, just that right there, and try making that shift back to the D very light and quick. I think even lighter. I still hear a lot of traveling.
Yeah.
That was great. Yes. So did you feel you kind of had to let go a little bit?
Yes.
Now, of course, it's up to you as an artist to decide what you want to do. And you could throw it out the window and do it, but it's nice to have a variety. So this is basically, the idea is you want to have as much variety in your, it's like colors on your palette. Palette? How do you say this?
Palette, yeah.
Palette, yeah. And so the more variety you have, the more, you know, it's almost like you can almost improvise in your colors, you know, while you're playing. Like, get so creative because the notes are already there. And we all know Bach was a control freak. One of the first composers who was such a control freak. He wrote out everything that other composers didn't. So in that sense, we don't really have much freedom. But when you learn those at your level, obviously, when you can take advantage of all those very subtle things, then you can just light it up. And so many, it's like Christmas decorations all of a sudden, you know, it's just really, really fun.
Yeah. So yeah, of course, these are my, you know, these are musical ideas which you can play with, but I'm just kind of using this space as an example to say, so maybe in a place like this, you would, because you have that phrase, you'd want the shaping to be, you'd want the shift to be a little quicker because, and I say this because when you're coming here, you have that shift later here where you go from the E to the A. And if you kind of make your shifts minimal before that and then really milk that, because it has hairpins, like, you know, I think that can make that shift so much more effective. If you make these shifts not completely clean, like robotic,
you can't really hide them, but
no, but in a way that you're, you know, and this one's kind of one of those shifts that you would travel on a finger here, rather than going up to it. It just makes it a little more accurate, and I think for this particular phrase it works a little better. Again, these are just my ideas and everybody's different, but and it's also a diminuendo, so you're not only making a diminuendo with your bow, but you can make a diminuendo with your shifts. You can make it more simple. You're working you're kind of using not only, so we're kind of layering it here. First we talked about dynamics, then we talked about bow, now we're talking about shifts, and all these things are layers in bringing out the phrase and the music. Do you want to try that from, you can go from this scale going up to kind of get into it, and you don't have to do exactly what I did, but try some different things. If it sounds silly, doesn't matter. I just want you to try different shifts. I want you to experiment. Like if you were practicing, what would you do if I said, hey, experiment with some different shifts?
Okay.
Very good. I liked that a lot. That was really nice. I think even I want to hear a little bit more diminuendo from the mezzo forte. I want to hear a little more simplicity. But that was really nice. I liked that. That came through really nicely. And the thing about that scale, it's so nice if you have it on an up bow. I think you end up up bow there for that scale. Is that an up bow?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, and that's part of the poco crescendo, and that's kind of the top of the crescendo going into that F. And I love scales like that because it's, and you have it on an up bow, and it's such a natural progression into the top note. And you can just sing out, it's still mezzo forte, so we don't want to do too much, but really spinning the sound there and projecting. So if we keep going, you know, that was a beautiful phrasing. I loved it. We have more hairpins here in this next phrase. So do you want to try this? Like for these, I would say, because you have this harmonic, for the first one, I would keep it short. But for the second one, have a little slide going up to it. Because if you do the slide twice, sometimes it's a little too much. Or if it's short twice, it doesn't sound so great. But maybe try that. Try making the first one shorter and the second one a longer shift. Sorry, I played wrong note, but yeah. Very good. That was really nice. I liked that. And that difference between the two notes, the two shifts was really, really beautiful, and I enjoyed it a lot. So,
do you have any questions yourself about like maybe some things that you would maybe either general goals with the piece or maybe just specific places?
Well, a common critique I always used to get from one of my teachers was I thought it was really interesting because you guys used almost exactly the same words that he did. Was this heft to my conception of the music, you know? And he always described it as a boat that was overloaded. It was overloaded with gold. It was nice stuff, but it's still overloaded and it's still unstable. And I think, from my perspective, I think my vibrato is a little. I never really thought about it too much, and sometimes I'm afraid that it can become overbearing. And I think that's like, for me, intertwined with shifting, vibrato and shifting. I think I tend to be a little absent-minded when I do these things. Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to talk about that more because I think that's one of my weaker points.
Yeah, that's great. And it's funny that you said that. You even read my mind, because right before you asked if you had questions, that was going to be my next point.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm glad, because I don't want to talk too much either. I want this to be a symbiotic relationship. But sometimes I get talking and I get carried away. So it's good you said that. But with vibrato, I think a really big thing that will help you is, so we have all these layers that we've talked about, and now vibrato is kind of that top layer that we're putting on top. So it's that last layer of the cake, the frosting,
I was just thinking of a cake too. We're like,
maybe we're really hungry.
You know, this is gonna sound, you know, I don't know, but my teacher always talked about cakes too.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe it's a string thing. Maybe we're all just.
You know, I have to tell you this. So my students brought it to my attention, and if some of my students are here, you're welcome to comment on this. But I'm a big fan of singing out rhythms and singing out phrases, and I found out that sometimes it's easier to explain a phrase if you put a word to it. And so when a person, for example, is going for a wrong accent in the phrase, I would put a word that would be a wrong accent in the word, and then they right away, like instead of taco, it would be taco, you know, or something like that, and then they would get it. And then one time my student told me, why do you always have to do it with the food? And I realized every time I'm thinking I was asleep, Whataburger or Taco Bell or Starbucks or cake or ravioli, and it was like funny, and I never even noticed that.
Yeah, it's really funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like it's like that top layer, and it's an embellishment. Another person actually, someone I took a lesson with a few years ago, used ketchup as an example, like saying like if you eat fries with ketchup, like you're not, if you smother the fries in ketchup so much that you can't taste the fries anymore, it's not good. But ketchup is supposed to be like, it enhances the flavor, but it's not supposed to be the main flavor.
Yeah.
And with vibrato, I feel like to a point it's kind of like that too. Like not completely. I think that vibrato does have a really big part of the sound, but we don't want to notice that it's there so much. We want it to enhance the sound. Like if you're eating that cake and you're like, wow, I really noticed this frosting. You know, maybe it's not so good. You want the frosting to enhance the flavor of the cake.
I like the little cake with my frosting.
Yeah, exactly. Or like you want the fries to be enhanced by the flavor of the ketchup, or whatever food you'd like to put in there. But and for the example, but I think one of the things that helps me do that is taking into account where I am in the register of my instrument.
Yes,
and
that's very
this is
important.
another Lynn Harrell thing. He talked a lot about this when I was at at Meadowmount. I was a teaching assistant for Julia Ligdon 2 years ago, and I was also an RA as well. So it was a busy summer, and these lectures, he was there for like a week or so, and he gave these lectures, and it was such a nice time to just wind down and listen to such a great master speak about, you know, the instrument. And one of my favorite things he said was about vibrato and about how we incorporate that into our sound, especially legato playing. So, for example, if a soprano is singing, the vibrato is going to be faster naturally because they, you know, their body is creating the vibrato, so it's a lot more natural sometimes than us. So we can, you know, take singers as a really good example because it's very natural what they do. And so the vibrato, the soprano is going to be a lot faster, whereas the vibrato bass is going to be slower because of the way that the tone is and the wideness. So the wideness of a vibrato is going to change. For example, if I play down here with a nice wide vibrato, that sounds good. That's what you'd expect. But if I play with that same speed here, like I kept the speed the same, I didn't change anything, it doesn't sound so good. It's too slow. Likewise, if I play, it's a little too much. And so I think one of the things, because I'm the same like you. I have a, you know, you have a beautiful vibrato. I also have a nice vibrato.
Yeah, I was going to say, by the way, your vibrato actually, by itself, it's not too much, but in this particular piece, you know, you have to be especially careful just because it's not, it's very romantic and it's great. So in a romantic piece, like, I wouldn't think at all there would be anything that we would want to change with your vibrato. But in this particular piece, that's a tough one for vibrato range. So.
Yeah. Hold on, I lost my train of
Sorry.
It's fine.
So we're talking, you're just like Zubin.
Oh yeah,
You
so
have
like
this-
having that beautiful vibrato sound is when you don't want the same vibrato sound for everything. Even if it's a beautiful sound, it can get old. So as you're experimenting with vibrato, in this piece especially because there are so many pianos and softer sections, I think your vibrato can be a little less wide just a little more, like even at this beginning, instead of, I think you can make the range, keep your hand loose, but I think you can make it a little smaller. Just not so wide. You'd be surprised at how little you actually need for those kinds of parts. I'm not doing much, but it's just enough. It's coming through. And then it also helps with your phrasing, so when you get to that polka crescendo, you can increase your vibrato and tap into that really nice big Zubin vibrato, and then come back a little bit after that. So using that vibrato is part of the phrasing, and I think the biggest thing for you is just being aware of it. And kind of like you were saying, like it's something that you know you need to work on, but this method of going through and finding what register you're in and finding, you know, talking about the phrasing, the different layers, that can be a wonderful way to organize that. And you can even write in or color code or whatever, what kinds of vibrato you want for different places, and that's a really great way to teach yourself, because I think you know, because I hear you do different kinds of vibrato, and I know you hear it, I know you know the sound you want. I think you're just, you know, kind of struggling a little bit with teaching yourself to do it, you know, kind of like you were saying, like that you know it's something you want to work on, but you're just trying to really ingrain it in your playing. So I think that would be a great thing for you to do, to just really tap in, analyze the piece, figure out what phrasing elements you want, layer it like we did, really pay attention to the dynamics, to the shifts, to every little detail, and then adding that vibrato will just be like the cherry on top. It'll just really amplify everything else that you're doing and enhance all the other beautiful factors of your playing and your sound. So I think I would do that. I would challenge you to go through the piece, explore it, and, you know, explore different kinds of vibrato for different sections. Even widening vibrato as you move through a section, or you know, making your vibrato smaller. And I never want anyone to associate, any of my students to associate small vibrato with tight vibrato. I don't want it to be tight. Small doesn't have to mean tight. So if it's small, it's still loose. My thumb isn't even, you know, touching the neck. It's just smaller.
So I think what it is. Oh, did we freeze a little bit?
I think he's good.
Okay. So what it is that, Esther, I like what you said. So it's almost like, it's not that you can't do those things. I think it's just planning, so you know you're the boss of it, you know exactly where you're doing what you're doing. I think it's that aspect, so that's what you're saying, like first exploring it and then really committing and deciding, well, this is what I want to do here, and just practicing it in. Because what I realized a lot of times, my students who are very talented, especially the ones that are very talented and do a lot of things naturally, they almost think, well, I'm going to learn the notes, and then the musicality, I just put it on top because I'm so musical. But it actually does change the quality, even like, because it's so much extra layers, like Esther was saying, that it will change the integrity of your technique too, unless you practice it in. And so it's one of those things as training your brain not to just be ready to change the notes here and bowings here, but also to change the feel, overall feel, so you can plan the certain vibrato here and the certain crescendo here and the certain bow speed there. And so breaking it up into small parts and then practicing until you are very happy and you're really in control of everything you're doing there, and then recording and listening back, analyzing, and then doing that. I think that would be a great idea. You want to try something like that? Or do you want to try something like that? Like
With the
different vibrato?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. So I think also Clyde said, I always left our lessons really hungry after all the food talk.
Thank you, Clyde. Thank you.
So yeah, I think what's a spot for you that you feel like you're struggling with varying your vibrato? I could pick one, but I'd like you to maybe pick something that you're struggling with a little bit.
There's a part, where is it? This part.
Yeah, awesome.
That part, I'm kind of lost there.
Yeah. So I think in that section, um, your vibrato can generally be not too wide because you are shifting a lot. You're moving through a lot of positions here. You know, there's a lot of like 1, 1, 1, 2, 3. So here, I think keep it simple, not too wide. Try this with like a nice, simple, just like even vibrato throughout. And I guess in the beginning there's this diminuendo, so lessen your vibrato a little bit through that. And as you grow through that phrase, widen it. So you see how it kind of, you take the vibrato, it's small at the beginning, and you lessen it, and then through that shift up, that beautiful, and then when you get to that B, you have that nice singing sound, and that's the top of the crescendo.
So do you think when we're in like the same place in the register, because here, particularly that last part, we're not really switching register, but the dynamic is changing. So do you think it's the vibrato is like a direct function of the dynamic that we're playing?
Yes, I think so. So yes, there's register, and that's a really good observation because register and dynamic are, you know, they both play into each other. Like as we're going into a higher register, and on the A string too. So if you notice, here we're on the D string. And as we're moving to the A string, we're getting that brighter sound. And you know, so those notes like here, he didn't have to write that on the D string, but he wanted that darker tone. So I think as we move into that brighter sound, our vibrato can flourish. And there's a lot of layers to this, and it's funny because there's no like hard and fast rule about like when to do what kind of vibrato. And you can use those things as guidelines, like registers and that kind of thing. But here, even though my vibrato is wide, I'm still keeping it appropriate for the register. Even though I'm flourishing, I'm not going over what's appropriate. So that's a nice healthy vibrato, but if I were to like too much, that would be maybe too fast, too aggressive. Having a wide vibrato is okay, just keeping it in context. Does that make sense?
What about dynamics? Would you vibrate differently depending on the different dynamic?
Yeah, so that's kind of what I was saying, that it kind of, they both play into each other. Like as we're moving through the crescendo going up into the upper register, since that's the top of the crescendo, the dynamic, I think the vibrato is going to change with the dynamic. So if you have a loud, you know, a louder dynamic, your vibrato is going to flourish more, it's going to be wider, it's going to be bigger, but you can still keep that within an appropriate kind of vibrato for the register. Does that make sense?
Totally. I totally agree.
Yeah.
And again, there's no fast and hard rule. Sometimes in romantic music on piano you have to actually vibrate more. But again, this is not romantic. That's the thing. It's like what you did at the beginning, you had the perfect vibrato when you started playing a little bit lighter, right? So if you can basically, so you have the range. So
does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yes, it does.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I know it was kind of a roundabout way to answer it, but there's just a lot. There's a lot of things that play into vibrato, and it's a complicated subject at times because there are so many different ways you can play with it. But I'd say vibrato, is definitely changes depending on dynamics, depending on register, depending on phrasing. And I think the most important part is to be in tune with what you want out of the piece, and that will give you, the guidance to decide what exactly it is, like what kind of sound you want, what kind of feel you want, and that'll change what kind of vibrato you do too. And maybe there are times where you're gonna want a wider vibrato, up here. There are times when you will want that. It just, depends, it depends on what you're looking for and what you want to portray. So the more you learn the piece and the more you explore it and analyze it, the more, you know, you'll try different things and find different ideas that you like. And one of my favorite things is recording a piece a lot and paying attention to how it sounded when I first worked on it and how it sounds later, because everything evolves so much. And I think you'll find with this piece, your phrasing, your vibrato, your sound, it's going to evolve a lot as you continue to work on it and continue to grow these ideas that you have, because you have great ideas. I think now you're at that stage where we're working together to hone everything in and to start learning how to express those ideas differently.
And then also, you know, that also I think the performance, the nature of performance itself is that you have all these wonderful tools now in your tool belt, right? But as a performer, it's almost like a soldier. You know, you want to be, when you're on stage or even when you're recording, it's also kind of being in a combat almost, because there always are going to be things that will be thrown at you. I mean, life is life, right? It's unpredictable. So in that sense, what you are now at the funnest part with this piece, that's the stage where, okay, you know what you want. You know how you feel about this piece. You know what you want to project with this piece. You really know the style. You got all your instruments that we're talking about, the different layers of vibrato sound. So now the funnest part, you got to become the boss of every tool. And you got to have that sense. And that's what I think for you, the next stage, if you want to really feel like you really know this piece, I think for you it's just a matter of deciding what do I really want in every little section, and practicing to really implement, okay, this is the vibrato I want here. So my practice right now is being the boss of that particular vibrato and being able to order that particular vibrato every time I play this note. That doesn't mean that you have the same scenario. You can practice all kinds of different scenarios, but the idea is that you're really the boss of what sound you want to produce. And I think that is the funnest place to be when you, because you're so, you're picking up all those changes. The vibrato very hard to do. You're just doing it. So you have it all. It's just a matter of acknowledging exactly the different degrees of sound, vibrato, all those things that we, right? The layers, but also different degrees of every layer, right? And so it's kind of, you almost categorizing everything. Now you have your catalog of all these amazing cards, and then you just pull them out. Now it's the fun part. You pull them out, you can map it out in your music. That's my favorite thing to do. Mark what I want to do. And then really practicing to where you can deliver it. You know, absolutely. And that's when first you figure out how you can do, and then that's when they say repetition is the mother of learning. And this is more actually intellectual kind of repetition, getting your brain to remember, and then your muscles will follow. And then once you do that, oh my goodness, it's like you can wake up in the middle of the night, in the middle of quarantine, and play it anytime you want. You know, I think that's exciting, because you're really at that really highest level of stage with this piece, and I'm sure with many other, with a lot of other repertoire you're playing. It's beautiful, beautiful playing.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much. Really.
Do you have any other questions before we end the official masterclass?
Well, this is more of a question about. This is more of a general question, but there are two instances in this piece about trills.
There are two what? Sorry.
The trills.
A little louder.
The trills.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm not a huge fan of the oh, I'm gonna trill as fast as I can. I always like to treat, well, you know, I'm a fangirl of Glenn Gould, you know. I'll admit this any day. But what I find interesting about his approach to trills is that they're always subdivisions of the original note that's being trilled. So the one that I really don't know how to treat is in the first page, where we have.
I think that was actually fine, what you just did. That sounded fine to me. it's kind of, it's just, I think what you did was fine. It's not a huge, like, you don't want to make a huge deal out of it too much. Just, it's like you want it to be a natural extension of those grace notes. So just, and I think trilling from above, because, right?
Yeah, so the last grace note is from above, so you can't really, that I don't know.
Yeah, I'd say trill from above, and that works really well because, and just, you can also, because the beats are so long, this is 1/4 note plus the grace notes, so I would explore, I think you can explore with how you want to map that beat out, because it's so slow, and it's 1/4 note, so I think what you did was good, but I think you can play with it, and I don't think there's a wrong answer. I think the only thing I would say that you should do is to to trill from above, because you have that grace note. Also, I think the way I was taught is that in Bach you usually trill from above, coming from the top note. And I know there's lots of different schools of thought, and I don't want anybody to come for me. So like, I'm not gonna like get into the direction.
Let's wrap this up before it's too late.
But that's what I was taught usually in Bach, to trill from above. So then, I think you can just, what you did was good. I think, as we were saying, just explore how you want to map that out, because it's such a long beat.
Okay. And also another thing that I find, since you do have, so this is a quarter, right? So, and you're probably thinking in eighth notes, most likely, right? Subdivision. So, and then you have another set of grace notes at the end. A lot of times you have to decide when do you want to stop the trill, and I think that's what will dictate the overall speed of your trill. Because in some trills it works more if you actually stop trilling and let the person hear the main note before you go to the grace notes. In some trills you don't want to do that, so it's up to you. You want to experiment with that. How do you feel about that trill? Like, do you want to trill all the way? Do you feel that it works musically to trill all the way to the end, or do you feel like leaving, that's an F, right? Because I can't read this.
Yeah, so like you can, like you could cut it off a little bit, or you could go all the way through. But I think I would start the grace notes on the beat. If you're confused about where to start, I think it'd be.
Yeah, so the last ones, I think sometimes I've noticed that it makes me uncomfortable. When I have something right after the trill, a lot of times, the only time I get comfortable with is when I decide that thing. Do I want to stop, and how long before? So you want to try that? How do you feel? Do you aim to actually stop your trill before the last grace notes, or do you aim to go through with it?
Yeah.
Or did you even think about it? You probably didn't think of it, but naturally, what do you tend to do? Try it. We're just curious.
Good. I think for this particular one, because we're shifting, we have to shift back to that E. I would say, like, as a cellist, I would say take a microscopic amount of time. If you decide that you want it all the way through, which it kind of sounded like you do, which is good. I like that. But I would take the smallest amount of space before that shift. So stop it just a little before so that you can shift, because otherwise you're going to confuse that shift a little bit. So just a tiny bit. Stop a little bit before you shift to that E, and I think it'll be golden. Do you want to try one more time?
Sure.
And I love how you start off a little bit slower on your trill. I think that is very, and actually a lot of times when you hear like pianists,
it's very
do that,
pianistic.
It's very, and I love because your first set of grace notes is a little bit slower, and so your trill kind of starts off, you kind of bounce off that, and you start with that slower pace of the trill, and it almost acts as a dynamic, even though you're not changing a dynamic, but that intensifying the trill with the speed, it really, I love it. It really, because the long note sometimes it hangs in the air. You bring some more dynamic into that note and more energy, and I really like with that little stop. I think I like that you're going through with the faster grace notes, but that little stop, you might want to just really feel that F before you go to the shift, just to make sure you don't miss the shift. I really like that progression. I think it worked really well.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
Yeah, you have a very good. I think you have a very good instinct on that. You should trust yourself.
Yeah,
and don't question. And one of the things that I love about because I see you, the questions you ask us, it's the same thing I ask myself all the time, and that's why I love recording, because a lot of times I would be, when you play the same piece forever, especially Bach, you see so many new things and you feel, oh yes, that's exactly the phrasing I want to do. But then I'm thinking, maybe I'm going crazy. Maybe I'm exaggerating to the point where it sounds like I'm sick, like I'm psycho. I really don't want to do that. And then what I do in that sense, then you can record it. And once you are not playing, but you're hearing yourself, it's very easy to hear whether it's really a psycho phrasing because you played it so much, or if it's really because now you understand the music and you can say, so you can always definitely do that. I think you can trust your ear, you have a very good ear, but it's harder when you're playing. Now, when you record and you listen, and especially if you record a bigger part of it so you can hear it in context, you can really, you will see that you see it a little bit more clearly, and it's not, because I totally get your question. I mean, sometimes it feels like maybe that's just too much, and I look like a crazy person, because that's why it's so nice to have advice, always to play for someone else. But even if you can't, I promise, once you hear yourself, we seem to have more level head about that. Just not, and that a lot of times can, clarify a lot of those things.
Yeah, well, awesome, Zubin. I think this is great. I would just, take all these things that we said today. I know it's a lot of information, but the most important part of our masterclass is you take everything and you apply it to what you want to see in the piece. So we're so happy that you wanted to work with us. We loved this. This was so fun.
Thank you for reaching out, and thank you for watching us and being our subscriber, guys. All of you who are watching, if you are subscribers, we really, really appreciate it. It's fun to have you tune in, and if you haven't subscribed, please do, and please give us lots of likes.
So thank you so much, Zubin. You have a beautiful sound, beautiful playing. Your ideas are really, really great. So run with those. Use this layering technique and be really specific about what you want. And I think once you have those specific ideas, it'll be really, really great.
Yes, bravo.
Thank you so much, guys.
But before we go, I'm sorry. Did you want to say something?
Oh, I was just saying thank you so much. I haven't had a real lesson in probably a year and a half. So I've been starved for this kind of conversation. So thank you so much.
Oh, well, that's amazing. That warms my heart. I'm so glad that we could do this today. And anytime, that's why we love having these wake up and smell the rosin things, because it's kind of like an interactive thing, and we love seeing people in the comments and discussion. And I think this is our last episode for the 2020 season, since the holidays are coming up. But coming in 2021, we'll definitely be starting up again, and we'll be so excited, and we'll be doing more, hopefully master classes and things. So we're just so glad you enjoy it, and it's a pleasure for me too, just to be able to work with you and explore things with you, because I learned so much in master classes too. I think sometimes people think, oh, well, the teacher just knows everything and they tell the student, but through discussing with you and Dr. Seitz and all the things, even through this class, I'm learning so much about my playing, and your questions kind of forced me to think about, how would I do that, and how would I see this? And I think, you can take that and run with it in being your own teacher in the practice room too. Pretend you're having a master class with someone and ask yourself those questions, and it'll not only make you a better player, but a better teacher too.
That's totally, that's so wonderful. And
awesome.
I wanted before, since we have three of us, I wanted to and I mentioned that for today's discussion, because Texas, just the region and the all-state auditions just finished, and we had everybody got results, and competition in music is a controversial subject, right? Now, obviously, there are some very, very good sides to it, and nice things where it helps motivate students, and it helps us to kind of take stock of where we are in the process, because we're getting kind of out of just hearing ourselves and comparing maybe a little bit. But I strongly believe that even though competing, a healthy competition can motivate students, can be a good thing, but there is a way that it's very important to use it in the right way. And so I know coming off of the region auditions and all-state auditions, sometimes students get disappointed because they felt that maybe they weren't judged fairly enough, or maybe just because they got maybe a chair that's below last season, that reflects on their level of playing, where we all know, right? First of all, judging the music is not like judging sports, or it's not exact math. And so I wanted all of us to kind of talk, and Zubin, as our guest, I'll let you talk a little bit. What do you think about competition in music? What is your take on it? How do you think, is there a good way to take it? Is there a bad way to take it? What do you think?
Yeah, of course. I'll bring it back to cakes, because it's such a great analogy that my teacher used. He always talked about, I went through a period where I wasn't really going to school, I wasn't really performing, I was just practicing. And I think he got frustrated with me at one point, because I didn't want to perform. And he said, you're playing this piece well, you have all the ingredients, you have your milk, your eggs, your butter, your vanilla extract, whatever you use, but it's just that, you haven't baked the thing yet. And I think that this performing and competition is how you bake the cake, and how you make the thing, how it all comes together, and because you do all this work, and you have to put it out there. You have to put it out there to be judged, to be critiqued, you have to put yourself out there to fail. It's an important part of the human experience, not even just the music experience. It's human to fail. And I think the healthiest way to approach music competition is like this, by saying, look, this is an important part of your evolution, not only as a musician, but also as a person. And whether or not you win doesn't really matter. It's just the act. You must participate in the act.
Yeah.
Of course, there's also very unhealthy ways to do it. If you tie your worth as a person or as a musician to whether or not you win, that's not good.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah.
But I did all state and all region stuff, not every year in high school, but I did it. And it was higher level music than I was used to playing. But what it did for me was that there's a teacher, I didn't study with them, she's from the past. Her name is Margaret Rowell, and the thing that she would say a lot is, perfection is not when there's nothing more to add, it's when there's nothing more to take away. And I think that preparing for things like all state and all region, you're confronted with this high level music, and you are confronted with the fact that you have to remove things from yourself, remove insecurities, remove, and that's something not physical, but there's a bunch of physical things you have to remove, such as tension or whatever. So overall, I think competition in music, maybe it's a little misnomer to call it competition per se, but also not, because there are definite winners. I think it is a good thing, a net good for the collective music world and for the individual.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's funny because when you were talking about putting yourself out there, I think with any competition or audition, that's the hardest part, is that you kind of have to accept that there's going to be things that go well and things that don't go well. And even if I have an example of a time when everything went so well in my favor, and I didn't win still. So it was like and it's, you know, sometimes that's the judges, like they're looking for a certain thing, they ate something for breakfast, they're in a certain mood that day, and maybe like, so I played
Starbucks was cold.
Yeah, so I played for this competition. It was a small competition in Kansas, and it was a really fun experience, and I played the first movement of Dvorak Cello Concerto, and it was fun, you know, how to.
And you totally nailed it.
Yeah, it was great.
You did
it was great. It was a great run. I was really happy. You know, there are of course always things that, you know, you want to change, but afterwards, you know, like people, there was like a kind of intermission after I played, and I was sitting, and people were literally like from the audience like lining up to tell me that they enjoyed my playing, and even one of the people who was facilitating the competition came up to me and was like, "Oh, that was beautiful. I really loved it. You've grown so much as a player," because he had heard me play like a long time ago. And so I was sitting there like, I got this in the bag. And then the judges, I didn't even place. I didn't get first, second, or third. And I was so shocked because I was like, I got this wonderful response from the audience, wonderful response from this facilitator, great response from myself, from my pianist, like everything seemed to line up in my favor, but because
me.
Yes, and mom. But like, you don't count. Your mom, you have. I'm just kidding. No, you count. You definitely count. But that's the thing. It's like the judges, and it's not that they did something wrong by not picking me, but it's like that particular day, maybe I impacted the audience that way, but I didn't impact the judges in a way that they felt like I was what they wanted to hear that day. And you know, and it stings because sometimes there's like, you know, political things or, you know, agendas, which I'm not saying there were or were not, for the record, but you know, no matter what, everybody's looking for something different on any given day. So like, you can't let those audition results, just like there was another festival where like, and of course we all progress, you know, as we go on with time, but sometimes progress looks a little like this, especially in auditioning. Like I auditioned for a festival, and the first year I auditioned for it, it's like a very competitive one. I got waitlisted, so I thought, okay, so next year I'm gonna get in. The next year I just went in and I like bombed that audition for whatever reason. It was just bad, and I didn't even get waitlisted. And I was like, that's backwards, because last year I thought, okay, I got waitlisted, so next year I'm gonna like get in. And so there are so many, like with competitions and auditions, there are so many factors, and it doesn't mean that you're bad or it's just like, maybe you didn't play your best for that like 5 minutes, or maybe you played your best, but the judge was looking for someone else's best that day. So like, it's really, you know, it's hard to separate those things sometimes, but the older I'm getting, the more I'm realizing, you know, as long as I go in and I'm proud of what I did, it doesn't matter what, you know, the judge says. The most important thing is that I gave myself this opportunity to learn and to grow and put myself out there, you know?
I totally agree. You know, my favorite violinist
I'm going to put some milk in my coffee.
My favorite violinist in the whole world, David Oistrakh. I just absolutely, I have to be honest, he was always my first teacher's favorite violinist. And maybe that's why I got hooked in. But I just feel like his playing was so versatile for any style, and I love his aesthetic, or artistic aesthetic overall. I love his sound, his technique. But he had this, when he was asked about competitions in music, he said, you know, obviously, like you were saying, sometimes competitions are important because sometimes they give us opportunities, right? Yeah. Like you were saying, sometimes you can't just come up to like these people who own concert halls and just say, I want to play there. You know, no one's going to. So that is very important, because sometimes it's the only outlet for a performer, young performer, just trying to break in. And it comes with demands. You have to work hard to even get in. So sometimes it's for opportunities. Sometimes it's for just finding someone to give you a feedback. Sometimes it's just to feel self-worth. Oh, I want to win it and get motivated. So, but in the end, you know, what David Oistrakh said, he said the only real competition in music should be between you and yourself. Am I better today than I was yesterday? Yes. It doesn't matter if I won or if I completely bombed the whatever I was doing. the most important thing that will really ensure my progress is, am I improving as the musician when I compare myself to myself? And I think, and it's sometimes it's really difficult to keep that in mind. But in the end, looking back, don't you think that all those experiences are playing into the fact that you're becoming better and better musician every day?
Oh yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
don't you guys? Because without performing, either way, whether it's just a competition or just a concert, I mean, you have to perform. That's what music is. And the truth is that sometimes that's the only way we can get performance opportunities, right? For example, in Texas region and solo and ensemble, yes, you know, there are some of the biggest opportunities, not just to compete, but just perform, you know, and it's such a lifesaver in that sense. But what we don't want, like I always tell Esther, you don't have to win everything. Just, it doesn't, like, sometimes we feel like if I'm good, then I'm going to win everything in the world. And that's not true. And also, music is not sports. That's another thing that makes it very, very tricky. You know, it's very subjective because you cannot really measure the level of a performer like in numbers. I know we have to assign numbers. I judged a lot where you really, the only way is you have to tally up the numbers. But in a way, you know, it's not like an athlete who jumped a certain like amount of feet, and there's nothing you can, you know, argue about that.
There's no concrete measure of like musicality.
Yeah.
Like everybody's gonna be looking for something different and wanting to hear something different. Like that's why there's no set best cellist in the world. Like maybe there's a fastest runner in the world, or like best, you know. But even then, like, you know, you could say, oh, maybe they're the fastest, but they're not my favorite.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You know.
And then a lot of times judging, unfortunately, comes down to just measuring things that are the easiest. Maybe like how many wrong notes you played, how many notes out of tune, how many notes with. So basically, technically, the only quantitative measurements that we can have in music are very low level. So what goes beyond, not that they're wrong, but there's so much more that goes into music. And so I think if we celebrate diversity more, and the fact we take from this, like, really understanding that placing a certain number is not the goal, and it will never reflect really truly what kind of musician you are now, and it's not going to affect as much as we think our career ahead. Because I think a lot of times, especially when you're young, we feel, oh no, now it's going to haunt me forever. I played here, people heard me play bad, they put this bad rating, and now it's going to... No, it's not like that. You know, it really is not. A single performance maybe is something, that single thing that you bombed, or even more than a single one. It's not going to, because thankfully people forget. There's so much going on, you know, and I think it's wonderful, and everyone is really happy to cheer success. So sometimes it's even better for me when I hear someone maybe 1 year on solo ensemble that did really badly, and maybe there were some, I have to say, a couple of times that I remember these people because they just totally bombed, and then it makes me even happier to hear that they progressed. So I think for my students, when you know, my students ask me to participate in certain competitions, certain auditions, I think the very first thing I tell them, you know what, I am happy to help you, but only if you agree to taking it the right way. Because I like that you're motivated, but I don't want it to destroy you if you might not get exactly the result you want, or to get you way too cocky if you win, you know, because that is so. But as long as it's a great challenge, it's a great motivation, that's great. As long as it, and especially for parents who are not musicians, I think it's very important to understand that, you know, because students, when high schoolers, middle schoolers, they do their region, their thing, I think it's hard for parents too. For me as a parent, it's harder when my kids, like, I feel are not maybe appreciated as much as they should be. I'm a kind of like a tiger mama in that sense. It really hurts me much more than my own, you know, things. But for parents, sometimes it's difficult to understand that the kid could be working hard and maybe placing behind what they placed last year. And I want to make sure and assure you, don't take it, you know, face value, because again, the teachers, the judges, I've been to competitions where I judge so many students. By the time you sit, it's all a blur, and it's really for judges too, as human beings, it's very difficult to be like 100% effective, because again, we don't have quantitative measurements. So the important thing is that to encourage your child and to really give them self-worth, that the feeling of self-worth, the feeling that it's not about the number, it's about how you grew as a musician. Did it make you practice more? Did it make you progress more? If that did, then it's totally worth it. And also, your life does not depend on what chair you get on all region or whether you get to all state or not. I never ever even heard of things as all state, all region before I came to the United States. I turned out okay. You know, I'm happy with what I do. So guys, just keep a perspective. It's not the end of the world. And I think, like Zubin, just you're an example. I'm sure you didn't win every single audition you ever went to. Neither did I, neither did you. But it definitely helps you to have experience for the next one, right? And so when you go through something, even though maybe it's not the best experience, but guess what? You can use it to build on. And those are the times when you grow the most and get motivated the most.
Yeah, and we're all still alive, and the world's still turning. That's the biggest thing. Sometimes I remind myself, like if I'm really nervous for a performance or a competition or something, I'm like, after this, no matter what happens, I'm still going to be alive. The world's still going to be turning. Tomorrow's still going to come. Like, you know, and it's the same with these, because there are a lot of discouraging feelings that come with, you know, not doing well in an audition or not placing how you want.
And even your juries, even exams.
And I don't think I don't think we're trying to like diminish that for sure, because you should feel what you want to feel, but it's just feeling and then accepting that, you know, it doesn't reflect who you are, and then like being able to move on from that and using it as a growth experience. And that learning how to do that is a skill in itself that I think we all have to work on constantly, you know, with lots of things in life, to not to judge ourselves by, you know, certain experiences, but to love ourselves for who we are, and, you know, just because we're alive and we're doing our best, you know.
And I think
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think doing that, you know, one of my favorite examples of this is Piatigorsky. I mean, there's better cellists now than him. There's cellists now that don't miss as many notes, that don't, you know, he wasn't a perfect guy, but he was so moving. He was an orator, you know, on the instrument. And I think that one should shift their perception of success or being good at music to being moving, to being able to move people, because that's what it is, you know. You're trying to move someone from a place that they were to a better place. So that should be your focus. You know, competition, yes, all of this, yes, it's good, but it must exist independently from your true desires in music.
Yes, that's totally, you know, we know there's so many competition, like Tchaikovsky competition. What number is it? I already forget. But do we really remember everyone who ever won the first prize? No, it's a big deal. But then we only remember people who are really great musicians. For example, there is a very famous violinist in Russia, one of my favorites, who won the second place in Tchaikovsky competition, you know. And so things like that are very, very, you know, subjective against. And I think the beauty of music that it celebrates diversity. And what I love about YouTube, that's actually why it's a wonderful platform where, you know, you can just throw things out there and see what happens. You know, I feel it's become much more democratic platform in a way for musicians, where now that we have so many people who are actually out there showing how they practice, we break that very stereotype of performers who are always perfect, because yes, we see performance on stage, they're perfect, or in their recordings, because that's a completely different environment. But it's helpful to see how people practice every day, how they're making mistakes, and then working to understand that we're all people. We make mistakes, and actually sometimes mistakes is what makes it fun, you know, and how you deal with it. Like that video we saw of that pianist who, you know, had to deal with we have to react to that video. There's this Brazilian pianist that she started playing a Liszt piece in a real concert, and she realized that her pedal wasn't working. So it's hilarious. We have to post a link to that video, that how she played it out, and it was just incredible that she worked with it on stage right in the middle of this something crisis that would make someone else probably cry and run away. And it's just, and that's what makes the best, because after all, we're show business guys, you know, just let's be playing. I know we're a little snobby, but technically, you know, music is for entertainment. Maybe not show business, but we're entertainment. Let's not forget that. And I think if we don't take ourselves too seriously, we can have much more fun in our audience too.
Yeah. Awesome.
So I wanted to thank everyone. I know we had so many comments. Alyssa, Ella, Sam, Adriana, Karina, Maria. Thank you so much, guys. All of you who Baltasar. Good morning. Did you see Baltasar here? And Juan Menendez, my mom, Nix Viola. We have all of these wonderful, people in the audience. Thank you so much for attending this. It's exciting. This is number 12, and hope you have very, very happy holidays. We will definitely be putting out videos, but just we're not going to do these events because obviously right now holidays, everybody is busy with the seasonal stuff, but we wish you happy Thanksgiving and Christmas. And
yes, and thank you again so much, Zubin, for playing.
Thank you.
Really a
bravo, beautiful
blessing
job.
to hear
Really
you play.
Thank you so much.
And let us know if any of you watching would like to be a part of a masterclass, or
we would love to
if you have any students that would like to be featured on our masterclass, we'd be happy. Zubin, if you want to play again sometime, we'd love to have you anytime.
That'd be awesome.
So
Thank you.
Yeah, and so if you would like to have a kind of a panel of people, sometimes would be fun in the future. If there's certain topics, please, like I said, the videos are going to be here, and so please feel free to post in comments any future topics or pieces you'd like us to discuss. And that's it. I think we're good.
All right. Well, I will end this stream. Thank you, everybody, for tuning
Bravo
in.
again.
And have wonderful Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year's, everything.
Kwanzaa, everything.